Well, that was certainly a difficult experience. Black Panther Wakanda Forever released this past weekend in 2022 and is directed by Ryan Coogler, who has also directed such films like Fruitvale Station, Creed, and the original Black Panther. And this film is starring Letitia Wright, Lupita Nyong'o, Denai Guerrilla, Winston Duke, Florence Kasumba, Dominic Thorne, Michaela Cole, Tanach Herrera, Martin Freeman, and the amazing Angela Bassett. Wakanda has recently suffered the loss of their king T'Challa, otherwise known as the Black Panther, due to an undisclosed disease that his sister Shuri feels responsible for because she couldn't find the cure in time. So while the kingdom is dealing with the loss of their king, the outside world is in the middle of the ocean looking for any other sources of vibranium. But they're coming very close to discovering an unknown underwater kingdom that is ruled by the serpent of the sea known as Namor. So Namor reaches out to Wakanda for assistance in defending themselves and keeping themselves hidden, but due to different ideologies, the two kingdoms find themselves on the brink of war. So it's finally happened. We get the introduction to one of the original Marvel Comics characters, in that of Namor. One of the original comic book runs of Marvel was Namor the Submariner going up against the Human Torch before the Human Torch was ever a part of the Fantastic Four. And I love their interpretation and their design influences for Namor and the kingdom. Everything is based around the Mayans and ancient civilizations in South America, and I love that aspect. And the underwater CGI, how everything looks fan-frickin-tastic. I just wish it was a little bit more colorful. I guess this is me going off of, Aquaman and how colorful, because all the Atlanteans, their eyes could see all of the lights that everything underwater could see. Here, it's very naturalistic, so everything's very dark, because when you go down to the depths of the ocean, there's no sunlight, so everything is very dark down there. So I get it, it's more of a naturalistic approach. I wish there was just more light so I could see more things and how beautiful this underwater kingdom is, but I get it, it's a design choice. But the big cloud that is over this movie, that was the biggest hurdle of creating and developing this movie, was of course the real-life passing of Chadwick Boseman, who was Black Panther in the original film and in the Avengers movies, passing away due to colon cancer, which is just frickin' awful, especially for young kids growing up with this movie and with Black Panther, and growing up with this superhero, only to realize that, oh, this actor is mortal. They are human. I remember when I was a kid and I learned that Christopher Reeve had been in a terrible horse riding accident and was completely paralyzed, and yeah, he was my Superman. That's what I was growing up on. So to learn that the Man of Steel, one of my biggest heroes, was just a regular man, it's kind of heartbreaking. So for Marvel to decide to carry on this lineage and to carry on this character and this world and this universe, it's a big task, and I do not envy Ryan Coogler at all for doing it. I can't even imagine stepping into a project like this after losing someone that Ryan Coogler admired, one of his best friends, to sit back and say, okay, now I created this world with him, and now he's gone, and I'm trying to continue that world without him. I can't even comprehend the struggle that he had in creating the story, not having his best friend with him. And I think Ryan Coogler does a hell of a job in directing this movie and creating this story around this real-world event. And the best way I can describe this movie is that it's one big, long eulogy for this man who we all come to love and enjoy in this universe and in films. There are moments in here that are absolutely beautiful. I was getting teary-eyed in the first act when there was a small little scene with Shuri and Ramonda just sitting in the wilderness around a campfire talking about coping and moving on and grieving and the grieving process and how to do it healthily. I was just in the audience just tearing up. I wasn't like bawling, like making a scene or anything, but tears were definitely coming down my eyes. But I will say when we get to the end of Act 2 and the end of Act 3 that this whole essence of this movie being a eulogy and a funeral for Chadwick Boseman is kind of what hinders this movie. The best example I can give is that, have you ever been to a really long funeral of a loved one? Like, at first, it's very powerful, and you're there in the audience, you're crying, and you love hearing all of these stories, you love hearing all these other people give their eulogies and talk about how much they love the person. But then it gets to a point where it's like 2 hours, 2.5 hours in, and you're like, okay, I've kind of been doing this for long enough today. I want to move on. I want to go get lunch. I want to go do something else. That is this movie for me. And I mean that in no disrespect to Chadwick Boseman at all. I just feel that the story, the original ideas for this story were implemented in the third act. And certain things happen in here. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but there's another tragedy that happens in this movie. But because we're focusing so much on T'Challa's passing, that this other person's passing is totally undermined. And it pissed me off so much because I love this other character. And even in the very end of this scene, we're still focusing on remembering T'Challa, as opposed to this other character that we just kind of toss along the wayside. Yep. They die. Yeah, we don't really care. Let's just keep focusing on T'Challa and remembering him. It's just not fair to this other character, and it was terribly annoying. The movie just has no sense of energy. It has no sense of life, which, again, is like a funeral. And yes, funerals are very important. It's very necessary. This movie is an absolute necessity. This movie had to happen so that we, as an audience, as a world watching all of these MCU films, could go through this grieving process. But again, the whole necessity of this movie being that funeral and being this really long eulogy, it's a detriment to the movie in the energy that we're missing. They try to incorporate a little bit of energy with Dominique Thorne, who I think is going to be a fantastic Ironheart. It's a little tiny taste that we're getting for her solo series that we're getting, I believe, next year fall. She was wonderful, injecting a little bit of life into this movie. And Okoye has a lot of great comedic moments in this movie that just, it's a relief to finally just laugh and chuckle at these points in this movie, especially when they're going through the US looking for Ironheart. But this movie is 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and you feel it. It gets to be a drag to when we get into that final act, and I have no more energy in caring as to what's happening on screen. And in a moment when we're supposed to be getting a brand new Black Panther and reuniting the kingdoms and re-inspiring the kingdoms, for us in the final climax to get on this big boat in the middle of the ocean and in the end just have like 10 or 12 Wakandans, again, was really undermining the moment of our new Black Panther shouting Wakanda Forever, and really it's just to like 10 people. I wish that was to a grand kingdom, to the kingdom of Wakanda, and inspiring them to get Wakanda back on their feet. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a necessary film. It is a beautiful film. It's a beautiful eulogy to a fallen hero. It falls apart in the third act for me, though, unfortunately. It's overflowing with love and compassion. It just feels like this film is devoid of any life and energy at all. It's the end of Phase 4 for the MCU. This phase has been really weird. It's been very strange. Yes, we're introducing a whole bunch of characters, but the MCU prides themselves and have made a name for themselves on building towards certain things. This entire phase, we haven't really built to anything. This is kind of just the fallout of Endgame and just introducing a whole bunch of other characters and brand new costumes, but we haven't built towards anything, which is very weird for the MCU. Hopefully in Phase 5, all of that will change, and then we get the energy that, hey, we're building towards something big and grand again. I'm gonna give Black Panther Wakanda Forever 3.5 out of 5 Blu-rays.
I am above average.
So guys, if you've seen Black Panther Wakanda Forever, what did you think about it? Where does it fit on your ranking of all the Phase 4 films and projects and all of the MCU projects in the past decade? Whatever you thought, comment below, let me know what you thought about it. And as always, if you like what you see here, if you like my take on movies, then hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that bell. See you on the next time I'm released next movie review. So guys, I will see you next time on the channel, but in the meantime, be well, be good to each other, and go watch a movie. Take care, guys.